Hello and welcome to this episode of the Fortnightly Dispatch brought to you by the Baker Street Irregulars. My name is Steve Doyle and I'm your host. I'm very happy to welcome our guest today. You know, in our hobby, there are people that you know personally, there's people you know of, there's names that you know that you see their written work or the work they've done for publications or done in prominent societies. Today's guest fills all these categories. I'm very happy to welcome Roger Johnson, who comes to us from the Sherlock Holmes Society of London today. Roger's a terrific Sherlockian and well known to many through both his work with the District Messenger, the Sherlock Holmes Society of London's newsletter, and Sherlock Holmes Journal, and lots of things. And I'm very happy to welcome him to the show today. Hello, Roger. Welcome to the show. It's really a great thing to have you here today. I'm very excited about that you're able to join us today.
After the the interesting experience of trying to join you last week, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, our viewers don't know, but we had some technical issues, and which is actually not uncommon when we're doing these recordings. You know, the technology is kind of a miracle it works at all, I think. So, you know, once in a while you get an issue. So, but we're here today, so that's good. So, Roger, I always like to start by asking our guests where they're coming to us from. I think it's kind of fun for viewers to know that we're getting people from all over our country and around the world.
Okay, well, I'm in my hometown, Chelmsford in Essex. If anyone knows Chelmsford in Massachusetts, it was named after this place. And we're about 30 miles outside London. We became a city officially in 2012, and the little house I share with my wife Jean Upton and our 3 cats is situated about halfway between the police headquarters and the prison.
That's wonderful. Now, you mentioned your wife Jean. Many of us know of you as a couple. Talk about Jean a little bit, if you don't mind. Jean is also a fine Sherlockian, and many of us think of you as a team. So tell us a little about Jean for a moment.
Oh, Jean is wonderful. We met through the Sherlock Holmes Society of London a very long time ago, 1982. I started producing the newsletter for the Sherlock Holmes Society, which subsequently became the District Messenger. And Jean was one of the first American subscribers in the days when it was all sent out by snail mail. We corresponded. The first time we were in the same place at the same time was 1987, when the Society had a private visit to the Granada television headquarters, the studios, where they filmed the studio scenes for the Sherlock Holmes series with Jeremy Brett. And we were both there, and we've got photographs to prove it. But we didn't meet.
Whoa.
Jean was one of those who had turned up, firstly, from a long way away, and secondly, she had the nous to bring a deerstalker with her. So when the press photographers, or rather the studio's photographers, said, "Anyone here with a deerstalker? We want photographs." Jean was one of those who got photographed.
They always love the deerstalker.
Oh, they do. They do.
We've had
so, as I say, there are,
yes. news crew shows up at a Sherlockian event, and
Yeah.
it's always the guy with the
Yeah.
douchebagger who makes it into the news. So
Mhm.
that's a great story.
Well, we actually met a couple of years later when the society went to Cambridge for a weekend. We met again, and then in Switzerland in 1991 we got to know each other properly. A couple of months later, Jean came to stay with me for a few days, and I proposed to her. She accepted. We were married the following year,
And the
and
rest
so
is
here we
history.
are. Yeah.
That's
Next year will be our 30th anniversary.
that's wonderful.
Astonishing.
Time flies, doesn't it? It's
Doesn't it
amazing.
just?
It sure does. Well, Roger, tell us a little bit. I always like to ask this question too. When did you discover Sherlock Holmes? When did you fall for the Sherlockian canon, and what was the catalyst there?
Hard to say. I think the first Holmes story I read was The Hound of the Baskervilles when I was about 10, because at that time there were not children's editions of the Holmes stories, and you had to be a member of the adult library to borrow them. My parents didn't have any Holmes stories as far as I remember. So I read The Hound, gave me nightmares, but I was so gripped by it that I couldn't wait to read on. I got all the stories and loved them, started reading books like James Edward Holroyd's Baker Street Byways, Gavin Brenn's My Dear Holmes, A Study in Sherlock, Michael Harrison's In the Footsteps of Sherlock Holmes, discovered Vincent Starrett's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, and it just opened up a world to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things I've come to love about all this is what you learn that's on the fringes, so to speak, but is important to the stories. The history, the geography, the social mores, even art, science. Wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, I always feel like my real education started when I read Sherlock Holmes.
Mm.
It's the gateway to everything else, it seems like.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, now, what time? When was this? When you first? How old were you? And when you? In
Teens, I guess, early teens. I knew about the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. I knew it existed. Besides the books, I grew up with radio rather than TV Sherlock Holmes, because the series with Carlton Hobbs and Norman Shelley as Holmes and Watson was running right up until the late 60s on BBC Radio. Then in 1964, there was the television production of The Speckled Band with Douglas Wilmer and Nigel Stock, and the following year, a whole series with them. We didn't get the Rathbone films on television, not that I remember. First time I saw one of those would have been at one of the society's meetings around about 1970.
That's really interesting. Because
because Jean grew up with those.
Right, over here, if you're of a certain age, it's almost the default answer to that question is, oh, I watched the Rathbone films, and that, and it's interesting to think that they weren't really available. For us over here, you mentioned that tremendous Douglas Wilmer series, and up until I don't know, relatively recently, until they were released on DVD,
Yeah.
we didn't see them. We
No.
none over here. We had photographs, of course, and we
Yeah.
knew of them, but never saw them until they were released.
Hmm.
And quite a revelation, I would say, to see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Very
heard
underrated because they were so little known.
I've had many English Sherlock Holmes friends tell me what a profound effect that series had when it premiered, and how it sparked probably a whole wave of Sherlock Holmes fans in Great Britain. Is that true? I mean, is that a thing that actually happened? Did it have
I'm
that
not
kind of effect?
sure. It probably did, but it was 3 or 4 years before I really got together with other Sherlock Holmes oriented people.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew of the series. We knew that, what was it, 68, there was the subsequent series with Peter Cushing, which was so variable. And poor Cushing, he said, what you're watching is not Peter Cushing doing his Peter Cushing acting at his best. It's Peter Cushing trying to remember his lines.
Poor guy. Although I will say this, I think his television adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles is, I think, in my opinion, probably the best one done. I think it's quite
agreed.
magnificent. Yeah, it's kind of a forgotten adaptation or dramatization, but first time I saw it, I was like, what am I watching? This is fantastic.
Yeah. I was lucky because it was I was editing the writing the newsletter, the District Messenger, when I was contacted by someone from whatever they called it, BBC Enterprises in those days, I think, and they were releasing The Hound on VHS, and was I interested in publicizing that? Yeah, send me a copy.
Sure.
So they did, and I had forgotten how very, very good it is.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it out there, my friends in the viewing audience, get online and find yourself a copy of it, because it's the best. It truly is. Well, that's kind of a natural.
It's easy enough now.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a natural segue into a shared interest of ours, which is film and television. I know that you have had experiences. I see you pop up occasionally on set when there's something being shot there, over there, and really jealous of that ability of yours to show up there. Just saying. That's a glorious thing. So let's talk a little bit about that. When was the first time? I know you've had an interest in it, and I know you collect. We'll talk about that in a few minutes too. But you know, when did your ability to sort of start connecting with these film and television productions start happening? And talk a little bit about how amazing some of those experiences might have been.
Well, I guess the first one would have been the visit to Granada Studios when Jean and I were both there. Having visited the exterior set, the Baker Street set, which was astonishing, we then went into the interior of 221B in a completely different area of the studios, of course. And there were quite a lot of us, so we went in a line. What I didn't know until afterwards was that the first people through, who were the ones who'd come equipped with deerstalkers, went in to find that present were Jeremy Brett, Edward Hardwick, Freddie Jones, Rosalie Williams. Whether I don't think they were actually filming at that time for Wisteria Lodge, but they were there because of it. So,
and so those deer stalker people got the meet and greet.
They did, and they got photographed with them as well. And the rest of us, by the time we got into the 221B sitting room set, they'd gone.
They're long gone.
They were off to do work. You know?
Darn. Well.
So, yeah, that would have been the first occasion. Subsequently, I guess, probably Sherlock. So,
right.
yeah, I guess it would have been Sherlock, though I'd been in communication with Bert Coules, basically the creator of the classic radio series for BBC Radio with Clive Merrison.
Right.
Been in
Bert's going to be a guest on the show down the road here, so that's great.
Indeed. And I was lucky enough to be invited to one of the recordings, not of the original series, but the further adventures, when Andrew Sachs had taken over as Watson from the sadly departed Michael Williams. But I was in contact with Bert all that time, you know. But let's see, Sherlock, somehow, you know, it's hard to remember now how you get in touch with people like this. I guess
sometimes it just happens.
Well, it does, but also, you see, when I became editor of the Sherlock Holmes Journal, I also took over the responsibility. Now, this sounds terribly important. I am press and publicity officer for the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. In fact, all that basically means is that it's my contact details on the website and in various directories. So I get a hell of a lot of communications, mostly by email these days. And one of them must have been from Hartswood, probably one of, Sue Virtue's assistants in the first place. We were invited, Jean and I, to what's it called, North Gower Street, which is where they filmed the Baker Street exteriors for the Sherlock series. And so there we were with Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman, Rupert, I want to say Rupert Everett, Rupert Graves, of course, the rest of the crew, and dear old Mark Gatiss, who was there in his capacity as an executive producer. But we had actually met Mark and a couple of the others before at press previews. And coming to think about it, I guess my first experience with the Granada TV series was actually when Michael Cox invited me to the press preview for the return of Sherlock Holmes. Oh, yes. I met Jeremy Brett and Patricia Hodge, who was
Yes.
most recently heard as Mrs. Hudson.
Well, that had to be showing up on the set of a show like Sherlock, which was at the time so tremendously popular. That must have been a real exciting day to be there.
It certainly was. Certainly was. We knew that. Now, this was the episode called the Reichenbach Fall. So we knew, but weren't allowed to tell anyone, that Douglas Wilmer had a cameo in that.
Right.
And yeah,
He was in the Diogenes Club, I think. He was the
that's
grumpy old
it. Yes. So we
man.
didn't actually, yeah, we didn't actually get to meet Douglas at that time because that was done at a completely different time. We did ask the director if we could do a little bit of walking past, which we did. And if it was, if there was film in the camera, so to speak, it never made it onto the screen, but it was fun to do.
It had to be a
And
really
great
exciting
fun
day.
to chat with the people,
Oh, I can only imagine how great that would have been. Now, Roger, I know while we're on the subject, I know that you collect film and television, Sherlockian film and television, and I know that you share within that category. You and I share a particularly focused area. You collect autographs of people who have been in dramatic production, Sherlockian dramatic productions, and I was delighted to read in the Baker Street Journal a while ago an article that you had written about this, because I do the same thing. I thought, oh, I finally found somebody who is, as you can see, I've got them on the wall back here, and there's not, barely an inch of space, and so fun. So tell us a little bit about your collecting and how you started it and why.
Well, I've been collecting. I had been accumulating, really, I guess, since meeting Jeremy Brett and Patricia Hodge, and there were, take one of the photographs. I was like, yeah, fine. Would you mind signing it for me? So, yes, those are framed and on the wall, not in this room, but in a larger room. And Douglas Wilmer, I think, had signed something when I met him at a convention. It didn't really start seriously until Jean and I took part in a TV program called Bargain Hunt, in which two teams of two with a tame expert are let loose on an antiques fair, buy a couple of items, and then they go to auction and you hope to make a profit. We were in the very first series. And the antiques fair in that case was held in the grandstand at Epsom Racecourse, where the Derby is run. It wasn't a very big one. We were limited to the ground floor for the filming. And after filming was over, we had time to spare and let loose for half an hour. So we went upstairs where there were more stalls, and right over in the far corner was an autograph dealer. I spotted a photograph signed by the young, very beautiful Elizabeth Taylor, a letter handwritten by George Bernard Shaw, a letter written by Lord Nelson. Jean didn't see any of that. She homed in immediately on a framed photograph with autographs of Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. And
who needs Lord Nelson when I can get Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce?
Well,
anyway,
Jean is a very good haggler, and she got us a decent price for the Rathbone and Bruce, and that really was the start of it.
Yeah, it's kind of addictive once for me, it was you realize this is a real piece of memorabilia here. I mean, it's really collectible, and it kind of opens your idea, as a lot of as collecting does, in general, to other ideas. And next thing you know, your entire interior of your house is covered in picture frames.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing I love is the personal start that again. The personal connection. You have something that the actor or writer has touched, has inscribed their own name on. It's a real link to greatness.
It is.
Or to mediocrity.
That's true sometimes. Not every name back there is great. But the thing is, it's like a talisman. It's a physical artifact of that person, that production, that event, that time. Yeah. It's very I completely share that with you. It's so true. And it's so interesting. Now, you mentioned before we started that we were just kind of comparing notes before we started here today that it's a battle between wall space and bookshelves, and that you said you keep most of your autograph collection in albums.
Yes, smaller ones in albums like this, at random. Don't know whether you can see that.
Hold on 1 second.
Sorry. Charles Gray on one side, and as I've got as it's facing away from me, I'm not sure who's on the other side.
That looks like David Burke. No,
David Bowen.
David Bowen.
Who,
okay.
Played Holmes on stage. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes and the Valley of Fear.
Well, it's a fun and relatively affordable way to collect, I think, and very exciting to do when it comes in.
Yeah, it's not only actors, by the way. I don't know whether you can see that. Joseph Bell.
Oh my goodness!
Oh. Not the radio presenter.
No, this is the Joseph Bell. Well, that's something.
This is the Joseph Bell. Yeah. Yeah, I was very lucky to get that. And on the next page, Madame Norma Neruda, the violinist who Holmes said had splendid attack and bowing.
That's fantastic. That really is. Thank you for sharing.
Well, as you know yourself, it's a matter of keeping your eyes open, knowing your limits, and occasionally being bold.
Right. True. And occasionally, I don't know about you, but I'll go a while without anything coming, and then all of a sudden I get this sort of sixth sense, and there it is. And sometimes they come to you too. It's almost like I didn't find this. This sort of found me. That's how I feel about it sometimes.
Now and again, yes.
It's strange. Hey, Roger, we need to take a short break. We have to work in a short message from our sponsor. Okay, we're back. Well, Roger, I want to talk to you. Let's pivot off of this subject, and I'd like to talk to you about all your activities with the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, because I know you have a number of responsibilities over the years. First of all, let's talk about, these are not necessarily in the order that you did them, but I do want to talk to you about the Sherlock Holmes, editing the Sherlock Holmes Journal.
Yeah, it actually came my way, really, I think, because I'd been writing the newsletter for 25 years or so. Nick Utekin, whom you know, of course, he'd been editing the Sherlock Holmes Journal since he was in his mid-20s, and was getting to think that enough was enough. He wanted someone to take over from it and picked on me as the obvious person. And Yeah, basically he kept badgering me. I said, well, I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll think about it. I actually took it over in 2007, shortly before taking early retirement from my job, which means I've been doing it now. This is my 15th year.
Yeah, as we said, time flies.
Doesn't it just?
It does.
Well, Nick did it for 30 years. I'm never likely to make it that long, but still very nearly half as long as he has done.
Now,
And
I would like to ask you about. I mean, I know here in America, I'm not sure how widely read the Sherlock Holmes Journal is. You all should be reading it. It's quite wonderful. It's quite different than the Baker Street Journal, though. Not only in its physical construction, but it seems to me in its content and approach to the subject. Can you kind of describe the Sherlock Holmes Journal's approach to what you publish?
Difficult. It's more obviously a journal of record, shall we say, perhaps, than the Baker Street Journal, because it's published only twice a year, and it does contain reports on the Society's activities throughout the year, which is a very important part of it. The Baker Street Irregulars has the one big week really, event in January, and then sometimes another event during the year. Those will be reported. But the reports in the Sherlock Holmes Journal do take up a reasonable amount of space there. We've only fairly recently, with advanced technology and frankly really nice digital cameras, been able to venture into good photographic illustrations and more of them. But we also have reviews, of course, rather more than the BSJ does, and longer.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I mean, we do, of course, pride ourselves on the articles, which range from the scholarly to the silly, and where possible, the silly are also scholarly. I have a backlog enough to fill every issue of the journal for nearly 4 years, which is a wonderful situation in a way, but it's very frustrating as well.
I know it's hard on the contributors, isn't it? Because people submit things and you accept it because it's good, but sometimes it can be a long wait just because of the capacity of what you can publish, you know.
And then there are the ones you say, no, I'm sorry, I won't take this out of fairness to other people, but it's very good. Try the Baker Street Journal, try Canadian Holmes, try the Passenger's Log. And they say, oh no, I want it in the Sherlock Holmes Journal. Why? Why us in particular?
Well, it's certainly it's a compliment for sure. That's
well, it is a compliment, of course, yes, but it can be frustrating.
Well,
but at the same time gratifying.
Talk a little bit about the District Messenger too, because it's clearly a different publication, and I love getting it because. But tell us what it is.
Well, I'll tell you how it started. Back in 1982, at a council meeting, I think it was Shirley Purvis said, notices for the Society come out every so often, but not very often. The journal comes out twice a year. And yet things are happening out there, plays in particular, and we don't get to hear about them. we should have some sort of grapevine service, an occasional newsletter, which is what it was in the early days. It was on an as and when basis that I said, some years, I think something like 2 issues. No, never quite that few, but still. Throughout the time that I wrote the District Messenger, as it became, which was 32 years, it was never on a regular basis. In 1987, I think there was something like 20 issues during the year.
Well, it was a busy
Other years, it might be. It was an amazing year.
That was the centennial of studying Scarlet. So
yeah,
that was an extremely busy year.
It was so much happening. Other years there might be 10 issues. I ran the District Messenger for all that time, and for the last few years at the same time as editing the journal. And Steve Rothman had already told me, you won't want to do both jobs at the same time. Oh, well, I'm young and fit. Yes. Well, I wasn't young and I certainly wasn't fit, but I managed it for a few years, and then someone else took it over, Carrie Paris. She gave up. She wanted to turn it into an entirely digital thing, and the council said, well, no, people actually want a newsletter, and she wasn't prepared to do that. So Jean stepped in. She established it on a monthly basis, like Scuttlebutt from the Spermaceti Press, and it's been monthly since Jean took over, which was several years ago.
Right. I look forward to getting it.
I'm very pleased to hear that. I love to get Scuttlebutt.
They're similar in mission, I think, but it's sort of the collected Sherlockian, happenings since the previous issue. And it's all that kind of timely stuff that comes and goes, that if you don't have, like you were saying, if you don't have a way of getting it out, it kind of comes and goes and just sort of vanishes. There's no record of it or anything like that. So
no, that's right. Peter Blau is always surprised that people want to look back through back issues of Scuttlebutt. Gossip from past years, I think he calls it. But it's so interesting.
It is. And sometimes something's happening now that can be kind of informed by something that, hey, I remember, wasn't it 5 years ago there was something going on? Yeah.
And Peter himself has amazing memory for what he had written. Either that, or as I do with the District Messenger, he goes into the computer and uses the search facility.
Well, I don't think that's cheating. It's a handy tool.
Think what you like. It works.
So, Roger, I want to talk to you. Let me see. Where are we on our time here? We're getting, time is going by here. Time flies, right? So let's talk a little bit about something that I've seen pop up more than once. We're so connected now and kind of keep track of each other through social media. And every once in a while, I'll see somebody reference a visit to the Sherlock Holmes pub in Northumberland Street. And which, first of all, talk about the pub and why, for some of our newer Sherlockians, what it is and what one of the main attractions of this place is. And then talk about how I see you getting special access for people to see this exhibit there.
Okay. Well, it goes back to 1951, the same year that the Society was founded. And the Society came about from the Sherlock Holmes exhibition in Baker Street, housed in the one building that has only ever legitimately borne the number 221, which was the headquarters of what became the Abbey National Bank. It was then a building society. The exhibition was the Borough of St. Marylabone's contribution to the Festival of Britain in 1951. All the local authorities throughout the country were expected to put on some sort of show in festival year. And so Sherlock Holmes was chosen as Marylabone's contribution. The borough reference librarian, a man called Jack Thorne, masterminded it with the help of his assistant, Miss Elfrida Pierce, and basically 3 volunteers, a medical professor, Bill Williams, and a solicitor, Colin Prestige, and a barrister, Tony Howlett, all of whom had too much time on their hands. So with a lot of work, they put the festival exhibition together. You can read all about it in the Baker Street Journal Christmas Annual for, God, I've forgotten what date it was.
A couple of years ago.
Very, very good, very interesting coverage by Nick Utekin and Matthias Bostrom. One evening after a hard day's work, they went across the road from the town hall to a pub which no longer exists, which was called Allen's Bar. And there, over a drink or two, someone said, "Isn't it about time for a Sherlock Holmes society? There was the one before the war, which petered out within a few years. Let's have another." And so they did. And that was how the society was founded. The exhibition, of course, did its run. Huge number of visitors, very popular. Adrian Conan Doyle took a lot of the exhibits, some of which he didn't own, some of which he never returned, but that was Adrian, and took them over to New York the following year, where through rather poor management, the exhibition there was not a great success. Things were returned. And in 1957, the brewers, Whitbread, who were pioneers of what they called feature inns. We call them theme pubs these days. They're not quite as popular as they used to be. They thought it'd be a nice idea to have a Sherlock Holmes pub. And there's this nice little one near Trafalgar Square, just off Northumberland Avenue. It was then called the Northumberland Arms. But before Northumberland Avenue was built, it had been the Northumberland Hotel.
Which
and of course
is...
they said, well, Henry Baskerville stayed at the Northumberland Hotel. Well, he wouldn't have stayed at that one because it was basically for commercial travellers.
Oh, don't burst my bubble, Roger.
No, I know. The name was there. And so they said, this will be it. And they bought all that was worth buying and could be bought of exhibits that had been in the exhibition. And they set up, with the help of a couple of people who'd been involved in the exhibition, including Jack Thorne and the stage designer, Michael Waite, who had set up the original 221B room. And so the Sherlock Holmes pub emerged from the Northumberland Arms. And there are now photos on the Society's Flickr gallery of the official opening in December 1957, where present were the Society's then president, S.C. Roberts, the editor of the journal, my very distinguished predecessor, Lord Donegal, and a few others. And the link between the Society and the pub has always been there, though it hasn't always been properly appreciated, I think.
Well,
sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, so the sitting room exhibit, I mean, I've seen it and I've been there. It's behind glass for protection.
Yes.
But you can see it, and it's quite lovely. And but isn't it sort of curated by, like, maybe you, right? I mean, somebody's got an eye on it, right? And
oh yeah, this is what I was getting to. About getting on for 30 years ago, Jean and a couple of our friends from the Society were there, noticed that the state of things in the room were looking a bit poorly, had a word with the managers who were new. And they were told, well, yeah, the reason it's not looking terribly good, there's been a flood from a washing machine on the floor overhead.
Oh, no, it's terrible.
Oh. So Jean, who had only fairly recently moved over here and had not yet got a job, had time on her hands. And she said, well, can we help? Can we get things up to scratch for you? And the other two helped, but Jean was really determined to do the proper job. She kept on. She got me involved, which I have been so grateful for. It's such a privilege.
I think it's
and between us, you know, since then we have repaired, replaced, restored. Some of the items were damaged beyond repair. Some of them, well, a couple of them actually went missing. Pair of boxing gloves. It took me about 9 months to find a pair of the right sort of vintage brown leather boxing gloves at an affordable price. So we replaced those. One item that has never been found, it's in someone's collection somewhere, is a silver, or at least white metal, syringe case inscribed with the name of A. Conan Doyle in a facsimile of his handwriting.
Wow.
Who has that? We don't know. But yeah, we've done a lot of work in that room over the years, and
well, it would be a privilege.
Well, I hope to goodness that when we're able to get back there, we shall find that it's still in reasonable condition and we can carry on.
It may need a brush up or something, but I think it's wonderful that it's been preserved. And I think that if you travel to London, you know, I know there's the museum and I know there's Speedy's and all these places, but you must go to the Sherlock Holmes pub. It's sort of, it's the first of everything there, and it's quite wonderful. Yeah.
Eat in the restaurant. Magical. You get the best view from there.
Yeah. It's kind of magical.
You remember?
Go ahead.
You remember probably that Orson Welles said that having access to RKO Studios to direct Citizen Kane, it was like having the biggest, best toy railway that any kid could want. Well, that room for us is the biggest, best doll's house that any kid could want.
I can only imagine. Wonderful. Well, Roger, we are out of time, sadly. I mean, we could probably sit here all day and talk Sherlock Holmes, but I just want to thank you for joining us today. It has been a real treat, and I'm grateful for the technology that can kind of connect us all, especially during this time. And so I just want to say thanks for coming on the show, and I look forward to seeing you sooner than later in person. Maybe I can get a personal tour of the pub's sitting room sometime when I can get over to London again.
You come over, we'll see to it. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roger. Say hello to Jean for me, and take care, and we'll be in touch. And that's it for this episode of the Fortnightly Dispatch, brought to you by the Baker Street Irregulars. You know, the technology that we have at our disposal now is amazing. We're able to bring guests like Roger to the show. Who would have thought, right? And now, next time we're gonna do the same thing with another international Sherlockian friend of ours who will be coming from an even further distance than Roger. You won't want to miss that. If you like the show and you look forward to seeing it when the new ones come out, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. We appear all over Facebook, and share us with maybe with your own page. I also would encourage you, if you have any questions or suggestions for us to talk to, or any other comments, to just post them on Facebook or on the YouTube channel, Facebook page where you might see the show, and we'll see them, and we'll take them into consideration, very much so. So that's it. Until then, take care, and we look forward to seeing you next time.